In 1992, LEGO released set 6086, Black Knight's Castle. This set, it never really got better than this for a LEGO castle. 12 great minifigs, a chunky base plate, and a bunch of big LEGO pieces that you can only really use specifically for castle builds like horse armor or Tudor wall printing or castle turrets. And for all that, it was pretty cheap. $85 in 1992, around $200-ish today. But of course, you're not going to get it for $200 today. For a brand new mint-in box Black Knight's Castle, you're going to be looking at around $4,200. The value of that set has gone up almost 5,000%. Here's another example, 10018, a bust of Darth Maul. Retailed for $150 in 2001, new in box, over $5,000 today. Or the Holy Grail, 10123 Cloud City, $100 in 2003, now mint condition around $8,000. Let's take two scenarios. One, I put $1,000 in the Dow Jones in 2003. If I reinvest the dividends, I'll have around $9,700 today, which is honestly not bad. But what if I bought 10 Cloud Cities instead? Now, 23 years later, call me Mr. Moneybags, says I would have $81,000. Yes, that's right. Certain LEGO sets can and do make more money than the stock market. And I'm far from the first to realize this.
You could invest in Legos to get some ridiculously insane returns, not only over, a year period, but investing long-term for 2, 5, 10 years plus.
Lego Tron up here, more in the $300 to $400 range. The returns that I typically will see is somewhere between 150 to 250% on a Lego set.
So I sold 114 Lego sets, and I made money on 111 of those, so I only lost money on 3 sets.
There was a whole cabal of LEGO investors all over YouTube and Discord. There's a brick seller boot camp that pitches
make return on investment far beyond even the world's greatest stock market investors, and use this to build a side business in your life that you can run on the side of a full-time job because it only takes a couple of hours a week.
The website says no catch, 70 to 100% return on investment. Some people are earning hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars a year on LEGO. I mean, I am just gobsmacked by this. It's insane. So today, let's look under the rock of LEGO investing, from an entry-level view of someone new to this world to a capital I investor who has a stockpile of LEGO sets he's sitting on. Is LEGO a good investment? Is there a difference between scalping and investing? And should I rethink my entire financial strategy moving towards LEGO sets instead of mutual funds and bonds? We'll see. My name's Eric Crittenden. This is Clutch Power, a show about the ways we love LEGO. Episode 22. Can LEGO outperform the stock market? In part 1, an interview with YouTuber Phil Edwards. Phil, one of the best video essayists out there, and with a few videos about LEGO under his belt, I wanted to get his point of view about LEGO investing. In part 2, an interview with Kevin of KDX Bricks Analytics. Kevin says he's only a small earner in the LEGO investing sphere, but he knows all the tricks of the trade. And in a bonus segment for Clutch Power supporters only, Kevin gets specific, what he sees as the good and bad LEGO themes to invest in, and his forecast for how LEGO's Smart Brick will perform. You can probably guess how that's going to go. But before that, let me clarify a few things this episode is not. This is not investing advice, and this is not a criticism of investing or even speculation markets in general. There are a million videos about those topics. This ain't one of them. Oh, you hear that? The market is open. Let's go. Part 1. Primaries and secondaries. Trading is a long-time human tradition. I mean, even before money, there was bartering, right? Of course, investing took longer to show up, but surprisingly, not that much longer.
Let's say you're a merchant in Babylon lending grain or money to someone. And let's say you lent 1 gur of grain. you could charge a 33% interest. For silver loans, if you lent 1 shekel, you'd get 1/5 of a shekel in interest. And these rates were very clearly spelled out in the code.
And as always happens, as time goes on, things get more complicated. In the 14th century, moneylenders started to trade debts and loans instead of like an actual tangible product. A stock exchange, as we know it, came in the 16th century, and now we have worlds of stocks and mutual funds and indices, etc. But, and I learned this today, the stock exchange is not a primary market, it is a secondary market. Here's the difference. Let's say I go buy a new Lego set from the Lego store, Lego gets my money, I get a set. Primary market. But let's say I buy a Lego set and I sell it to someone else for a profit. That's a secondary market. Lego ain't getting a cut of that. And I mean, with that framework, literally anything can be a secondary market.
If you or someone you know like collects vintage pop figures or vintage airplanes or vintage video games, then you have to deal with secondary markets all the time.
Right now, I'd say one of the biggest secondary markets, or maybe most popular, is Pokemon cards, which is why you see fights over Pokemon cards at Costco.
Hey, chill!
And Target.
You train? Oh, now you're a tough guy. Now you want to fight. Typical.
And hobby stores.
He's not skipping us, bro. Go, man. He's doing for the flip, dude.
Ooh. Lego is maybe calmer, but it's kind of the same thing. I've talked to a couple of collectors about this already.
COVID had everybody locked down and people were bored, so they started collecting things or expanding their collection. And I don't care if it was stamps or comic books or whatever it was. Anything that was a collectible item became, more valuable, and more trading was happening. That was global. It wasn't just in the US. So that really amped up and inflated the market from a pricing standpoint.
Odds are, if you are listening to this, you are entrenched in the Lego fandom. But non-Lego people are always shocked that these little bits of plastic are so valuable.
We're talking about these minifigs. Some of them are literally worth more than gold, Brooke. I mean, they are pieces of plastic, but they are extremely valuable.
News anchor is my eternal litmus test. And that is the tone that Phil Edwards takes in his most recent Lego video, The Secret Economies of Lego.
It's studied by economists.
What I call the Lego yield curve is essentially average or expected returns of different Lego sets.
And optimized by entrepreneurs.
We are always buying Lego. I'm never not buying Lego. I've spent all the way up to $80,000 in cash in Lego before.
And by Phil's own admission.
I'm not a huge Lego fan and an outsider.
So I wanted to get his take on this Lego secondary market as someone outside the scene. From what you found, what is the Lego secondary market?
It's a lot bigger and more diverse than I expected it to be. I initially thought that it would just be kind of people reselling cool things on eBay, but in reality, it ranges a lot, whether it depends on where they're selling or the type of selling they're doing or the degree of the selling, a lot of which I'm sure some Lego fans are familiar with, but I think there's little pockets that nobody can run into. So yeah, it runs the whole gamut. I wasn't enmeshed in this world of secondary markets as like a buyer or seller myself. I was just vaguely aware of them.
For people who are unfamiliar with the Lego secondary market, can you compare it to like another kind of collectible commodity?
Yeah, it's interesting because I had a few of my interviewees basically in this episode that of my show that I did on my channel. I interviewed 5 people, I think, across the Lego secondary market, and each of them have different sort of analogies for how they think of what they do. The economist who I spoke to, he studied the Lego secondary market, and he actually works with cryptocurrencies a lot. And so he sees it as through this lens of a very traditional alternative asset. So it's like Bitcoin, Lego, in that it's tradable, it's storable, the value is somewhat predictable, the marketplace, can be understood to some degree. But then I talked to another guy, Dave, who thought of it as like a wine cellar, which I thought was a pretty apt analogy, where you collect, okay, this Bordeaux from 1992 and this cab from 2008 is just like, X Star Wars figure from 1998 or whatever. So I really like that analogy. But then to finish it out, I also met this guy, Fritz, who is reselling Legos at a massive scale. And what he'll do is he'll break down large lots of Lego, kind of mining them for minifigs or mining them for special pieces that are really useful. And so that, gosh, I mean, it's almost like a junkyard, or maybe that's not like kind enough of an analogy, but or a commodities trader on a stock exchange or something like that.
Yeah, I've been trying to think of how to compare the Lego secondary market to like another commodity, because it's not really like gold or silver.
Yeah, and like I think that the tricky thing too is like it's tempting to go with some of the collectibles that are also traded on similar sites, like on Whatnot. A lot of the other goods on Whatnot are collectible trading cards like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon. In some ways, the Lego market's different even from Pokemon, because like a new set can drastically change the value of an old set, positively or negatively. Like, I don't know if there's an exact analogy to that compared to a baseball card. Like, if you have that, like, whatever the $1 million Honus Wagner baseball card is, Topps is not going to be able to reissue or issue a new Honus Wagner card that could jeopardize or increase the value of the previous one. But Lego could say, hey, we're going to put out a new Boba Fett, and it's going to be such a crappy Boba Fett that the old Boba Fett's going to go up in value, or it's going to be so amazingly awesome that now no one will care about the old Boba Fett, or all the money that would have gone to that Boba Fett will now go to this one. So it's very dynamic in a way that a lot of other things don't seem to be to me. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Did you end up coming up with anything that you...
Kind of the closest I got was like the sets are mutual funds and the minifigs and pieces are stocks within those funds.
Okay, yeah.
But like it's not great.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense though, because like a Star Wars set is like part of the Star Wars ETF, and then you can break out the minifig, and that's like Apple or some Apple stock or something like that, where it's like it's pulling up the value of the whole set. That totally makes sense to me.
I don't think there's another collectible quite like it.
It's also interesting to me to learn a little more about how much money people are making off of these, because my first few interviews were kind of like, okay, this is like a cool little hobby, like this is kind of neat. But then I gradually started meeting people who really did make this their full-time job, and who are just going through massive volume too.
What do you think attracts these investors or traders or whatever we want to call them to Lego?
I think that they are attracted to Lego obviously because they start off as fans, and I think that is a barrier to entry. I don't think you have as much of a risk of speculators coming in and deciding, okay, we're going to get in this Lego market. The margins aren't so stratospheric that I don't think people are learning about it on their own just to get into it. But that said, I think their fandom does provide them the edge that any investor wants to have. Like, they have a certain degree of knowledge that is important to cornering a market. Like, I know that if I were able to, trade less risk heavy, but minor investments in stuff that I know about, I'd be more tempted to do it. And I think that's the temptation that they run into too. But then also, I mean, most of these people really do have a collector side to them as well. And so I think a lot of them are hobbyists, and they say, well, if I take a hit on this, at least I can play with it. And so I think that really helps kind of sand off some of the edges.
In your opinion, is this a fad?
I don't superly think it's a fad, because I don't think that the money is big enough for it to be
sure.
a fad. I mean, to me, the big question is like the volatility of some of these assets seems uncertain to me, but I'm also not a particularly active investor myself. So maybe I just have a low risk tolerance when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But when I see this, I think to myself, okay, so much of this industry is dependent on Star Wars fandom and the success of Star Wars Lego sets and minifigs. I mean, Disney is kind of like not doing a great job with Star Wars right now. Right. What if it continues to go down the toilet and your asset totally goes to zero because nobody knows about Star Wars in 30 years. That could foreseeably happen. I mean, a lot of people are turning these assets over much more quickly, so I don't think that's really an issue. But stuff like that I wonder about, or I wonder about like, are computerized and electronic experiments that Lego is doing, are those going to change what Lego means to people? And are they going to screw up what the company has? And I just don't know the answer to that. So, but I don't personally think it's a fad. I don't know. What do you think it's a fad? I mean, you're in this world much more than me.
I have been thinking a lot about how this compares to the Beanie Babies craze.
Yeah.
Especially in, because, that kind of ended when Ty started releasing rare variants, which is not dissimilar to like, if Lego, like I could think of one, there was like a Captain Rex figure in a really expensive set. So the figure was very highly sought after. And then they released the figure in like a $10 set. And the value of the minifig just plummeted.
Yeah, I mean, and Sava told me, he's the economist that I talked to. He told me that with BrickHeads, those were really popular on the secondary market. And then he felt that it was clear in the evidence that Lego Group had done some production to alleviate the scarcity there. They'd made more BrickHeads, not just so they could make more money, but also so that they could not make Lego fans mad. So that was a big part of it. After I published this video about the secret economics of Lego, a lot of people were kind of upset that I was platforming these people who they viewed as scalpers. And I will say that, I always ask people what the misconception is about them as a way for them to kind of tell on themselves, about what they're doing. Yeah. And a lot of them did say, people think we're scalpers. People think that we benefit from that. I ended up not coming away from it with that view just because a lot of these sets are resold so quickly and Lego doesn't generate a ton of scarcity. Like a lot of the sets are out there for a while, and yeah, they do take them out, but in that case, the collectors almost provide a service of maintaining these things well, so that if you do miss this rather large window that Lego gives on most products, you can buy it in good condition later. It seems helpful to me.
What is a scalper, in your opinion?
Somebody who's scooping up a relatively scarce thing and then selling it at a markup. And to me, Lego doesn't quite get there based on what I've seen and what I've heard. Yeah. Most of the stuff doesn't seem scarce enough. Like there are some special edition products that people told me about where it's like, okay, this minifig and this does seem like scalping. This minifig is only going to be sold in this physical location of a store on this date. And then if somebody is buying 10 of those or something, that does seem like scalping.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of these are sets that were sold to the public for a number of years and were widely available.
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting to buy a Lego set and then not build it.
I get what you're saying. I guess I'm not a big collector of anything myself, but like I went on eBay and for a video, I bought a 30-year-old bottle of unopened Orbitz soda. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I saw that.
It's got these little balls floating in it and stuff. And so to me, that collector didn't keep people from drinking Orbitz in the 90s because there was enough Orbitz. But they did serve this like museum function. They're like a decentralized museum for this stuff. And then I could come in 30 years later and buy it. And so that's kind of how I perceive, but maybe it's harder to get your hands on some of these sets than I'm perceiving. So maybe that's where I'm kind of getting it wrong. I don't know.
Not as far as I know. Who are the buyers of these sets?
I've heard anecdotally from the people I talk to about people buying it for their son or daughter because their child had fixated on one particular character or something like that. So some of the purchases won't be from investors. They'll be from people who just wanted to get X set or character for their child, and not even for themselves. So I imagine there's all sorts of different cases. And I don't think most of these investors are selling to other investors. the way that might be the case in like cryptocurrencies. I think they are largely selling to people who will play or construct the sets. Yeah, it's not just this cyclical thing. Although I don't have hard data. I don't know how you would. I don't think any of the sets or any of the marketplaces have unique enough identifiers that you could actually track how much it's going back and forth as a single product. I know that does happen with collectibles, but yeah, I don't know if that data exists for this.
What specifically with Star Wars, and I guess to a lesser degree Harry Potter, is there's like sort of two levels of interest, because there's the Star Wars level, and then like on top of that there's the Lego level. So like Lego has to make a good set out of the thing Star Wars fans want.
There were tons of examples that people gave me of minifigs that were more or less impressive than other minifigs that would be almost identical to non-collectors, you know. So that's like a really clear-cut one where it's like, okay, this Boba Fett with this little design on his costume is worth 3x the other Boba Fett. So there's definitely stuff like that. And then there's also stuff with sets too, like an older Death Star might be vastly more complex and preferable to a newer one that's been made. So the newer one might have like more updated IP or little tweaks to the design, but it's like way less complex. And so then that ends up actually being worth less than the older one. But then there's other cases where they make the better Star Wars or Harry Potter set later on, and the old one tanks in value, which is like kind of flies in the face of what you would think is a collector. You know, like the old one should always maintain value, but sometimes there were a couple of examples where that didn't happen. So it's very unpredictable like that.
Up next, let's crank things up a bit as I pull in an actual Lego investor who gives me his view of the secondary market and the difference between what he does and scalping. Part 2. Waiting for retirement. Lego makes a lot of sets each year. Last year, for the first time, over 1,000. And look, they're not going to stay on store shelves forever, so Lego retires sets to make way for new ones. Which retire and which don't is kind of a big question mark. For example, a random city set, 60361 Ultimate Stunt Riders Challenge, was on shelves for about 8 months. Meanwhile, 10220 Volkswagen T1 camper van was out for over 9 years. There is a ton of speculation all over the internet about what sets will retire when, because Lego doesn't really share that knowledge. And that's the space Kevin lives in. He runs the YouTube channel KDX Bricks Analytics and was gracious enough to chat with me about how, why, and most importantly, when he invests in Lego sets. So when did you start looking at these as an investment?
I would say it was probably 7 years ago. So 3 years into buying sets for the kids, I would, if we were out, Home Goods, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, I think they're all the same company. They would have like those random Ninjago or Minecraft sets or superhero sets, huge discount. And I'd buy some of them thinking this is a great deal. I'm going to put this away. And when the kids get a little older, and then over time I was looking at values. After a while, I was saying, wow, a lot of the sets that I like are sets that go up in value. And so then I started saying, well, how about I buy 2 of this set and maybe 3 of this set? And then from there, it's just gradually grown into,
And now you said you were building a foundation. So does that mean there are investors who are like beyond what you are at?
So I am tiny compared to some. Tiny. So I am in some Discord groups I know of. I've seen them comment. There are some folks in these groups that do 7 figures annually.
In sales?
In Lego sales revenue.
Like that they're buying or that they're selling to other people?
Well, Well, both if they're doing it year over year. So out of maybe 250 people, I'd say there's a couple of those. But then out of 250 people, I would say that there's maybe 50 of them that are doing, maybe 40 of them are doing six figures. And some of those are in the 300 to 400 range.
I can't imagine spending $1 million on Lego.
Yeah, you got to have a whole operation to do that. That is,
yeah.
And it's not something I'm looking to do. I want to keep scaling up a little bit, but it's not something I want to do. Did you see my video by chance where I highlighted my revenue and profit for 2025? So my revenue was 15,000 and my profit was 7, something like that.
Which I would say that's pretty good.
It's pretty awesome. I love it, but I am tiny.
Yeah, wow. So very basic, very broadly, how does the investment market work?
So everything I buy is new in box, and I keep it new in box.
When you say new in box, does that mean like currently for sale by Lego or just like mint condition, retired?
Great question. So it means, it can mean both.
Okay.
But it just means that the Lego box itself, the seals have never been cracked open. I rarely buy sets that have already retired. I am usually 99% of the time I'm buying Lego sets that are currently available by Lego and by retailers. So I'm buying primary market sets. First thing, of course, is the research. There's a lot of things that we look at, green flags, red flags on which sets are good. There's probably, 6 or 7 items on the hit list, if you will. And I'll kind of rank those highest, middle, and lowest interest. Second step is sourcing them. And that is looking out very thoroughly for deals. That buy-in price is really, really important. After that, of course, it is buying them. Now, the timing is really important too. There are a few lists out there that show the sets that are retiring in the current year. Some of them even show for each set when they're projected to retire, 27, 28, 29. But we're all just focused on current year retirements. And so we track that list. And so then, and we track the research, we track the buy price, the deals. And then when we find a good deal, then we go buy the set.
So more often than not, you're going after the ones that are about to be retired versus like this set just came out.
Exactly. Okay. Always waiting till sets are close to retirement, because that way then you're what we call in our field, the hold time is as short as possible. So that way your investment dollars aren't tied up in a set that's not going to retire for a couple of years, because you can't sell it for those couple of years because it's available at the retail price. Now, the other issue is, and the reason it's good to wait, especially later in the year. So even early 2026. Now, I've done some buying recently because Walmart's had a lot of clearance items, but early in the year, I'm still generally not buying unless it's a great deal, because that Lego retirement list is not perfect. Lego does not publish it. There's assumption that these retirement lists do have some Lego information fed to it. This is just me, but I think that Lego does a good job managing their leaks. But there are leaks, but I think that Lego generally is controlling those because they want to keep the hype going. Leaks of new sets, leaks of new official images and that kind of stuff. And there are people that, just get that information. But that retirement list is never perfect. And so if you buy a year too early or early in the year, you're at risk of that set getting extended another year or two. And now you're holding on to it even longer before you can sell it.
Where do you sell these sets?
So I sell on Marketplace in my local community. I do sell on eBay some. And then recently I got approved to sell on Walmart.com, and that has been fantastic. I like all three a lot. The least profitable method is on Marketplace, but I really enjoy it because I make sure to price less than eBay, less than Amazon, because I'm not paying fees to sell it locally. And so I want to make sure it's a good deal for them. It's a good deal for me. And so between this last year, October, mostly November and December for the holidays, I met up with like over 100 people from Marketplace. And I always either meet up right near I work or 30 seconds down the street. And, some people would ghost me once we would say, hey, this price, and they'd say, yeah, I want it. And I'd say, okay, I meet here. And then I'd never hear from them again. Totally fine. I don't lose any sleep over that. I'm kind to everybody. But once somebody said, yep, I'll be there at this time, I never had anybody not show up. And everybody that I met with was great. And a lot of times it was AFOLs getting stuff for themselves that they were really excited about, or parents getting stuff for kids. And every single one of them was telling me, it's so awesome you have this set. I didn't get it when it was out. I've been looking for it. And since I'm social and I talk a lot, I just like that. And I've made a lot of nice connections in the community, and I still text with some people. I've been invited for dinner a couple of times, and I just really enjoy that. I also enjoy selling on Walmart because the market that we're filling of having sets that have already retired but available is really valuable and really fun for all of us Lego fans. And the example I always equate it to is the original Star Wars waves back in 2000 and 2002 and all that are really expensive new in box today. And that's because they're super rare. And if we had more people investing in them back then they wouldn't be as expensive. And I wish we did, because I would love to go buy some of those, but $50 sets are $700. And so one elephant in the room that I'll touch on is that I get the occasional comment saying you're a scalper.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, somebody, and I like to respond and have a little bit of fun, and I keep it totally fun, but, one person said, I've never, there's nothing, there's nobody worse than you, or something like that. And it's great. I love diversity of thought and ideas and opinion. Have at it. But in my eyes, what those people are missing is that I am not buying sets from the primary market because they're scarce. These are I'm buying them towards the end of retirement. The vast majority of them have been on sale multiple times before. Or maybe they're not on sale, but you could do a higher percentage of Rakuten cashback, or Capital One cashback, or get a gift with purchase, or double points at Lego, right? So there are opportunities to get deals on these sets. And so instead, what we're getting are the sets when the stores are ready, they're ready to be gone because they need shelf space and online space for the next sets. And so, we grab those. And then, the typical hold time is, you want the shortest as possible. But, these days, I probably average around 24 months. I think the average Lego investor is 18 to 24 months. So when you're selling something a couple of years later, that's early enough that people still remember it, but it's long enough that people are excited to find it. Are there bad apples out there? Of course. Everybody that I have sold to, especially face-to-face, is just thrilled as can be. And I really enjoy fulfilling that market gap. I am taking over the storage responsibility. The retailers are done storing them because they're not selling as well anymore. I am taking over the storage responsibility and willing to hold them for a little while and then fill that gap. And I find myself doing it too. I love Speed Champions, for example, and I don't necessarily get them all. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I forgot that one, or I now want it. I changed my mind. So I go on Marketplace and find somebody with it.
Yeah. Just because I imagine this will get brought up with the scalpers, can you give me an example of like a Lego scalper, like kind of what their behavior would be versus yours?
The Pokemon sets.
Okay.
So I don't know if you heard all the craze a few months ago. Okay, yeah. So Lego has never produced Pokemon sets. So when those sets came out, especially the big one, it sold out very quickly. And a lot of what I would say Lego scalpers, and I want to be clear, when I say that, no judgment for me. If people want to do that, it's fine. It's It's legal. We see what happens with Pokemon cards and everything when they come out and people are, adults are throwing kids out of the way. I don't like that. I don't want to do the scalping thing, but if people are doing it ethically and legally, then, do your thing. But those, everybody suspected that they would sell out. And so there were a lot of Lego investor types that said, hey, I'm going to go buy that day one. And it came with a solid gift with purchase. And then they wanted to try to flip them, within the next few days or the next week, because they knew that Lego would be out of stock for a little while.
Just to take advantage of the scarcity.
That's right. And look, taking advantage of scarcity, it's a real thing. Markets are created by that. Yeah. But I don't enjoy that process. Partly I don't enjoy that process because I don't like the pressure of saying I got to flip this right now to make my profit. And if I wait a week, I might miss it. I enjoy the process of, sourcing what I want to source, putting it in my database, taking my time.
I guess they're both investments, but it's just sort of the mission statement behind what you do and what scalpers do is different.
Yeah. So, and then another reason I don't like doing that is I think it's hard to scale up very large. That opportunity just doesn't happen too much with Lego.
Yeah.
And if I'm meeting somebody face to face and I know that I bought a set for $650 a week ago and I'm selling it to them for $900, I imagine they'll still be appreciative since they want to make the deal, but
you don't want to upset people when you're face to face.
Yeah. And I've built a nice little reputation in my Facebook marketplace sales. I've had other people, I've shown some good success. So I've had other people in the Discords ask what I'm doing. And the main thing I'm doing is I just don't get mad at anybody. If somebody doesn't talk to me, or says, hey, I'm sorry we had a deal, but I totally changed my mind, I respond back with, sounds great. I hope you get, the sets you're looking for.
Yeah, where I imagine, just investing in general beyond Lego, there is sort of a sense of desperation, right?
Yeah.
But not with you.
Not with me. The Lego product is so solid that, I love looking at my shelves full of Lego sets going, that one's doing great, that one's doing great, that one's doing great, and I can sell them now if I want. I don't need to sell them now. I would honestly I would have a higher sales velocity, but I just have trouble finding the time.
Yeah. That's the limiting factor.
Yeah. And then, of course, I look at a couple of shelves and I say, well, all of those BrickHeads Star Wars multi-packs are doing terrible. They're going to lose me money or break even. You don't win them all.
Yeah. So why, in a general sense, is Lego a good investment?
So my lifetime return on investment is about 80%. My lifetime revenue per hour, profit per hour is in the $50 to $75 range. But I think it's a good investment because it's something different. It's something that you can control yourself. It's an opportunity to do a side hustle. In today's world, with everything being digital, I think some physical things are kind of nice. I joke that I, invest in plastics, physical plastics. But I think there's just some opportunity there. But I do for myself and many others say this is in no way a primary investment tool or the large piece of the investment pie. This is smaller side of the investment. And then also I think there's some real joy with it. Like if I was not into Legos, if I was not an AFOL, I would not do this.
Yeah.
But I was just talking to my buddy the other day, and something I enjoy is there are tons of great sets. We talked about at the beginning. Lego is just in a golden age.
Yeah.
And there are tons of great sets. I don't have time to build them all. I don't have the space to display them all.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy physically owning a set that I really like, but have decided I'm never going to build and own.
Yeah.
But it's cool to own some of those sets and get them to people that want them. And then 10 years from now, I'm going to look back and be like, oh yeah, I had some of those. And just that contact and, the shuffling of product is really enjoyable.
Is there a lot of investor to investor selling, or is it mostly in your experience, to AFOLs or people who are going to build the set?
In my experience, it's very little investor to investor selling. The only time that happens is two ways. One, an investor is getting out of the game, and so they're ready to clear out. Or two, there might be somebody who has more platforms to sell. So there are a few people in the groups who actually have physical stores, whether they're Bricks and Minifigures or some other locally owned toy store. People say, hey, would you like to buy these for your store? And obviously the seller's not going to make the margin they were hoping, but it might be a set that's just not doing as well, or they have too many.
So let's kind of get into some specifics. For a Lego investment, I mean, Lego launches like new waves like every couple months, right?
Yep.
What do you look for in a good investment?
All right. So green flags are how long the shelf life is. Now, you won't necessarily know that at the beginning, but over time you start to see, okay, this one's projected to retire this year. That's going to be a 1.5-year shelf life or a 2.5-year shelf life. That's good. If it has a 4 or 5-year shelf life, that is an indication that the demand is pretty high. But it's also an indication that there could be a lot of supply on the secondary market. However, sometimes it's rare, but if Lego keeps a set out for 9 or 10 years, then that might be an indication that the demand is so high that it doesn't matter if it's oversupplied on the secondary market, it still could go up. Shelf life is really important. And then supply and demand data. And the way you can look at that is that you can go on Amazon, where they show for Lego and all their products, how many have sold in the last month. The higher the sales velocity, more demand. You can look on eBay and see how many new listings are on eBay. And if it's, for a set that's still available on the shelves, if it's down around 50 or 75, that indicates maybe it's less supplied on the secondary market. Higher than that could indicate more supply on the secondary market. And then you can actually pay for different services. The main one is called Keepa, and that tracks all of the sales analytics for all sellers. Basically, you punch in a SKU and you can find all the historical data. You can see primary market sales, prices, frequency. You can see secondary market sales. You can see when either of them are in or out of stock. You can see how many sellers there are throughout the year. And so even, that data is great after a set's retired, because now you don't have the primary market, and now you get to look and see, well, what's this set going for on the secondary market and how often is it selling? But even while it's still available, before we decide to pick the set up, if it goes out of stock, then the secondary market takes over. And if that price jumps on Amazon, that's a good indication. And a lot of sets will go out of stock over not a lot, but some will go out of stock over the holidays. And so you can also see how the number of secondary market sellers will ramp up over the holidays, and then it'll drop off. Well, if that ramp up is only maybe 30 versus 70, then that's a good sign of there isn't going to be too much supply on the secondary market.
Yeah. So does Lego tend to retire sets as demand dies out?
I actually don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows. I would say generally I would guess that would be the main driver, but they're still a privately owned company, so there's very little financial and strategy information available on them. But I think overall there are many factors. Obviously, demand will start to die out, but they also want to keep flashing out new sets to keep the buzz going, keep the excitement going, keep customers coming back.
Yeah. Do minifigs really drive a lot of the investment, or your prediction?
If it is an IP set, more so, yes. If it's a set that the same thing is going to be recreated in the future, going back to the Star Wars ships that get produced over and over, more so, yes. But then when we get into like the Icons, which has the modular buildings, all of those have done well. It's not about the minifigures. In the city sets, in the typewriter that doesn't have any minifigures. So it really depends on what the value in the box is.
Do you remember the Captain Rex controversy, I suppose?
So UCS Venator, Captain Rex minifigure, shot out of the gate, valued well over $100, close to $200. And then they put it in a $12 microfighter.
In that case, would that have been affected by you waiting until the sets were retired? Would you have just completely not been affected by that re-release?
I would never be affected by that for two reasons. One, now this exact scenario, I would never be affected because they released the Microfighter before the Venator retired. Venator's retiring this year, another awesome UCS investment in my opinion. The other reason is I am not buying a $650 Lego set for just the minifigure. If that is the value in the box, it might be a set that can turn a profit, but I'm not taking that risk. There are too many other good sets that I would want to put my money into. So for me personally, I don't care.
Are there investors who will just crack open the box and flip the minifigs?
Yes. And that gets back more to what we were talking about earlier, where you have to do that quickly. You got to buy it quick and sell it quick. And then, it's more transactions. Now what I do with the rest of the pieces. Now, every now and then you'll get people that'll say, hey, I really want the Venator. I don't care about the minifigure. And so I want to own the Venator for $450 instead of $650. That I'm totally cool with. Get that minifigure out on the market. If somebody pays you $200 for it, great.
Up next, for Clutch Power supporters only, get your green and red flags out because Kevin's going to take me through which LEGO themes he sees as a good investment. It'll surprise you. If you are not a supporter and you would like to help the show out, the link is in the show notes below. You're going to get bonus content for every episode along with a special digital LEGO mock. For this one, I built a nice little illustration of the classic bull and bear, the symbols of Wall Street. Let it inspire you while you invest in LEGO. Thank you to Kevin and Phil for talking with me. Kevin runs KDX Analytics, and he pointed me towards some good resources, including that Brick Seller Bootcamp I mentioned. All those links are down in the show notes. And Phil is one of a kind. He's one of my genuine just favorite YouTubers, and I was starstruck when he agreed to hop on a call with me. He puts an insane amount of effort into his videos, and he asks great questions like, how do billboards work? What happened to those cool wooden playgrounds? Or is Buc-ee's a cult? It's good stuff. Those are all in the show notes as well. And finally, thank you for listening to the show. I am so grateful you made it all the way to the end. I appreciate it. If you can, share the show around and follow the podcast everywhere. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. It is the same handle wherever you go. ClutchPower.pod. My name's Eric Crittenden. This has been Clutch Power. Stay connected.